Good morning. I'm Michelle Flood with eXp Realty, and today we're going to talk about 10 questions you should ask your real estate agent whenever you're looking to buy a home. If you look into the comment section of this video here on Facebook, I'm going to give you links to my website and to my YouTube page. I would really appreciate it if you are curious about what's happening in the market that you sign up at my website. But even if you're not looking at real estate right now, if you would just go out to my YouTube channel, like the page and subscribe, maybe look at a few of the videos and like those as well, that can help me in the algorithm. I'm trying to build that page up and I need a little help. I appreciate that. So choosing the right home is exciting, but it can take a lot of work. So even when you have an agent that understands the features you're looking for and is helping you locate and review the homes, you just have to know that it's going to take a lot of your time and your energy. This isn't something that you're going to do in a weekend. To make the viewings easier and more efficient, it's really important that you make a list of questions for your agent. So once you get details about each property, you can more effectively compare all the houses and then make a decision about the right home for you, and not just, I'm ready because I'm tired. And there's a reason why I say that. So I had buyers a few years ago that were just at the end. They were tired. They were looking at everything. And so what I do as a real estate agent when I'm working with my people is generally, especially in houses that are vacant, I'll take a step back when we first walk into the house and I'll just observe how they react with each other and with the house so that I can get an idea of what's really important to them. And so every time we walked into the house, the wife would walk into the kitchen area and the dining room. Those were her two favorite places. And the spouse, he would go right straight to the garage. He wouldn't even look at anything else. If it had decent curb appeal, he was great with that. Sometimes that made a difference. But for the most part, this dude would be in the house, where's the garage, and walking right towards that room. So after a few weeks of actually looking at property, he was like, I'm tired. She was tired. They said, we're going to make an offer on this one house we were standing in. And it didn't have a garage. And it had this big open floor plan, which for some people is amazing. But for her, having that kitchen dining room combination and then a separate living area seemed to be really important. And so I saw that they were compromising on what they really wanted in a home because they were tired. And this was before the boom. This was not a time where there were a million offers on any houses. We had time. But when you're a mortal and not a real estate agent, it seems after you've seen a dozen houses or so that you should have already found the right one. And that's not particularly true. So when they stopped and looked at me that day and said, we want to make an offer on this particular property, I looked at them and I said, no, this is not the particular property you want. Well, first I said, okay, that's great. We could do this because it's ultimately not my decision. But I did say, here's the reasons why I don't think you should. And then listed out what I just said to you guys. No garage. This is just one big giant room. There were just things that were not really for them. And then I told them they should go home and talk about it with each other because this house was going to be there later today or tomorrow. And they did. And even though they were sad and I could see it on their faces that I had ultimately said this is probably not the place for you, they did call me and say, okay, you're right, we're not going to do that. And then we did find the perfect house with a giant 2-car garage on a cul-de-sac with a kitchen that had eat-in space and a dining area off to the side. And they love their home still to this day. I hear them talk to me all about it all the time. And so this is why it's important to have an agent with you that is standing outside, because I'm not emotionally involved in this purchase and you are. This is where you're going to make your memories. And for me, it's just me trying to find a space that fits the things that you've said to me over the course of the time that we've been together. So obviously, if you have a spouse or a partner, like we said, they should be there. You might want to go alone at first with your real estate agent so you can narrow down a few strong possibilities. And that's another thing too. You'll go online and you'll look, and I'll be pulling things for you as well. But when you have 12, 14 houses and you think you want to see all of those in one day, that's really not a good idea, because the way our minds work, the first and the last things you see are the things you're going to remember the most. So I really encourage people to see 4 or fewer houses at a time so they don't get overwhelmed with everything they saw. Just because we go out on Saturday doesn't mean we can't go out on Sunday. So just know that you don't want to have 12 things that you're looking at and then trying to narrow it down to the 4 that you like the best out of the 12. Look at those 12 houses that you're just thinking about seeing. Put, 8 of them on the back burner for another time, and then pick 4 that we should go see that day that you're ready to view, so that you're not overwhelmed and trying to decide what house was it with that weird entryway or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's better to narrow things down so you don't have too many selections all at one time. And like I said, we can generally go see the other ones the next day or the next weekend. And then talk to your partner. Have them look at those 4 choices you've made before we even decide to go see them. And even if we already made appointments, you know how easy it is to cancel an appointment? It's not a big deal. We do that all the time. Agents are used to each other, calling each other, scheduling, rescheduling, or just pulling into a driveway and going, yo, I don't think this area is for me, or this house is for me, or whatever it is that you don't like about it, Some people like to bring other people with them, friends or family members. It's often best to wait on bringing a third person until you have your options narrowed down to the most likely candidates, but I understand why you would want to bring people with you. Also, if you have small children, little kids get bored. And so it might be easier for you to be focused with a more critical eye if your eye is not on your child. And I know sometimes that's not the thing to do. I sometimes try to help when we have little kids that are in the house with us. But the thing is, I can't pay attention to you if I have to pay attention to them. And especially in a house that's got people living in it, it's really better if you don't bring your children along, if at all possible. And I know sometimes that means that one spouse has to stay home. But if you can, you should leave your younger children at home. Also, you don't want your kids to get invested. I've been in situations where the little kids were excited, where the seller looked at this kid and said, this could be your room. Won't you just love this to be your room? And then ultimately took a different bid on the house after she let the kids nest. Even with older kids, until you're sure this is the house you want to make a bid on, I wouldn't bring my kids to showings if I could at all make sure that they weren't there. So what should you look for when you're viewing a home? Well, it's important to make sure it fits in with your budget, right? We sometimes will suggest that you view a home that is outside of your budget if it fits all the other requirements. But if you don't have any flexibility on what you can afford, it can just lead to you being disappointed. So getting pre-qualified is super important. And honestly, I won't take anybody out unless they speak to a lender and get their qualification letter sent to me before we go. Because you don't want to go and see something and love it only to find out after the fact that this house is not going to be affordable for you. You should also make sure that you know the areas and which ones are the most important to you and stick close to those areas, particularly if you have a school district that you want to. And while you can't make updates and renovations to houses, you can't change the neighborhood. I'm sorry, when you can make updates and renovations, you can't change the neighborhood. So make sure that you stick close to where you really want to be and know that paint is paint and carpet is carpet, unless it's something super expensive and then it's not going to pass inspection, and that's a whole nother video. So what should you ask your agent before you view? Your agent should have done some research on the property they're showing you. If for any reason you're not seeing the property with your agent, such as during an open house, find out these answers from your agent if you can. How long has the property been on the market? Properties that have been sitting for some time may have more motivated sellers. There also could be major problems that have stopped other potential buyers. So if a home hasn't been available for long, you may need to prepare to act fast and make an offer. What are the costs of comparable homes in the area? So I try to make sure that all the houses are being listed for the same amounts. And what's more important than what the list price is, what has sold around that property, to make sure that whatever we're going to offer is going to be in concert with what other houses have been on the market for. And if you've got a house that's overpriced and you really love it and you're afraid it's going to be gone, and then you're going to make an offer on this property that's close to the asking price, but other houses have sold for less around you, and you're going to get a mortgage, this home may not appraise because of what's happening around you. So you should be ready to negotiate. You should decide to make if you should decide to make an offer. If it's lower, this could mean that there's a problem with the home. So you want to make sure if the cost is higher than expected, you're ready to make that offer. But if it's lower, this could mean there's a problem with the home. So, and if it's been sitting there for a minute. So all of these things are important. Is it in a flood zone? That's super important here in Florida because we have hurricanes, we have torrential downpours. So you want to know. And some houses are in flood zones, but the place where the house sits isn't actually in the zone, but it's still considered a flood zone because you own the property, and that portion of the property in the North 40 floods. So you need to know that because you're going to need extra insurance for that. Is there a homeowners association? You want to know if there is, and if it has rules about how you can live, whether you can paint the house, what color you can paint the house, if you can change the landscaping out, how much are the fees, when are they due, what amenities do they cover? Do they cover the common areas or the front areas of the property where you enter? Is there a pool that you're paying for? Does it pick up your garbage when you pay for this? What are you getting for the homeowners association fees? So all of those things are important, just like anything else we discussed before you become attached to the property. 10 things to ask when you view a home. So there's probably lots of questions you'll have over and above these, but this is a really great place to start. Why is the seller moving? A seller is leaving the area to take a different job or has outgrown the home. They have different reasons for why they're moving. Someone who doesn't get along with the neighbors, sometimes it's knowing why the seller is leaving can help you to know if you can negotiate the price. If the seller is highly motivated, you can have some room to make additional requests for contingencies in your offer, like repairs or carpeting or paint or whatever it is. What comes with the property? Fixtures like faucets and built-in closets stay with the home. Anything that's anchored to walls or floors or ceilings, except for in the what's stated in the listing. So sometimes people have really expensive chandeliers or ceiling fans, and they can take those as long as they tell you that they're taking those in the listing. You can also negotiate for them if you really want them. But if they do take anything off the ceiling like that, they have to replace it with something. So they have to either cap it off or put another fixture up there. How old is the roof? Super important. Since things cost so much more money now to fix them, you really want to know how old the roof is. But here's the thing too, you're gonna have a home inspection. You need to have a home inspection, and that should include somebody walking your roof to tell you how much life there is, and to look up into your attic to see what kind of straps and tie downs you have, because obviously we're in Florida and you want it to be staying on during a hurricane, but also having that roof inspected and knowing that you have life on it. When you go to get your homeowner's insurance, it's going to be cheaper the younger, the better the job was done on the roof. Sometimes if the roof needs to be replaced, you can negotiate it if the seller's motivated enough to get out of that house, and they'll take money out at closing to do that for you. How old is your air conditioning system or heating system? Again, this is something that's going to be checked during your home inspection, but this is another very high cost item. And let me just say that the home inspection is a snapshot in time. Doesn't mean that after the day of closing, when you walk in, that your AC isn't going to completely fail. It can happen. It's a snapshot of the day that they do the inspection. So you want to check the heating and cooling system. You want to know how old the heating and cooling system is, because in Florida we got like a shelf life of 15 years. Are there any disclosures? So we have seller's disclosures in Florida that talk about the age of the house. If the house is built before 1978, there should be a lead paint disclosure that goes with it, because those houses were probably painted with lead paint. They ask about, has any part of the home flooded? What has the roof ever had issues? And different companies use different sellers disclosures. I pull my seller's disclosure right off of my real estate board site. We have forms out there and I just take those. But you want to know if there's any kind of wood destroying organisms, if there's been mold, if there's asbestos, any kind of harmful materials that have maybe been buried in the ground around it. Was the house always residential, or was it used for mixed use? All of these things are important, but sometimes you have sellers that don't know anything about the house. It might be a corporation like the ones that have purchased all these houses here recently, or it could be that somebody inherited the house and they don't know what happened in those houses. But if a house was built before 1978, we can safely assume there's probably lead paint in there. Are there any problems with the house? So Florida law says that anything I personally can see, or you can personally see, or the seller can personally see with their eye, that would readily affect the price of the house needs to be disclosed. That being said, a seller may not know. Generally, they do know the things that are wrong with the house, and they have to disclose those things if it affects the value of the property. Mostly they don't want to get to the inspection place and then find out, and then you discover that there's major problems with the house. But generally they like to tell you if there's anything that needs to be repaired. Most people are pretty upfront and honest. If I take a listing and I know there's stuff wrong with it, I ask my sellers to disclose that on their seller's disclosure. And subsequently, when I speak to other agents when they're making appointments to see properties, I tell them, there's things you can spy with your eye, and you probably need to take those things into consideration, and then have them go look and make sure that this is something that will work for their buyers. You can't just hold information back about something that's majorly wrong with the property, or you're going to have issues later. And your agent should tell you this, and the buyer's agent should be protecting their buyers from any kind of thing that they see, or push that seller's or that buyer to get their home inspection. And this is why it's so important to have that. Have there been any additions or renovations? One time I had a house that was originally built as a single-story unit, and this was now a house on stilts. And that's when I learned to read building schematics, because the house was built up, and I would have never known, except for there was a really great agent that worked at my office. This is when I was really new in the business, and she showed me, why is it on stilts? This house doesn't show it that way. And sure enough, when I walked inside the house, you could see that the whole bottom floor had once been the living area. So you want to know about those things, and you want to make sure they were permitted, because if they were not permitted and you move into that house and somebody has beef with you, they could hit the permitting central in Pasco County or whatever county you're in, Manatee County, and tell them that there were modifications done to the house that were not permitted, and they can make you as the new owner tear all those things out and start all over again. Ask about the contractor if there were additions made. There are a lot of homeowners that like do-it-yourself projects, and they may not have used the right techniques or gotten permits for the work. It's really important, just like I said before, that work was permitted, so that you don't get in trouble and left holding the bag for somebody who decided to do it themselves and not hire a licensed contractor or pull the permits. Turn on the faucets. What's the water pressure like? You need to know that stuff. And in fact, I would turn a bunch of shit on all at the same time, if at all possible, so you could see what the water flow is like in the houses. When was the last time the property was surveyed? Where are the pins? To avoid any clashes over property, You need to make sure that the surveyor markers are there to show you where the boundaries are, and make sure there are no fences or structures that are extended over the line. So, this is super important. I had a house in the last year where the person bought several, over 10 acres of land, and ultimately ended up owning only 4, even though there was a survey from 5 years prior, even though Pasco County had it said that all the acreage belonged to the seller of the property. When my buyer got the property and had it resurveyed, she only owned 4 acres out of 12. If you're owning anything more than an acre, you want to know where everything is. When it's in a little subdivision where the property line is 0.12, yeah, it's important so that the person's fence isn't on your land. But when you own several acres of property, you want to know that you own all of it. The last time I checked, this person was still arguing over whether or not this property was hers. And then Pasco County did the dumbest thing and retitled it in the seller's name. And if it was wrong, it was wrong when he bought it. So why didn't they retitle it in the seller before's name? And then the seller that sold it to my people wasn't even motivated to say anything about it until they got a tax bill, and as it should be. So these are really important. You want to know that the property you're buying is actually available for you to purchase. And the last thing is, are there any easements? An easement is a legal right of way to access your property. A neighbor, the electric company, whatever. If you share a driveway, like there are villas that have the shared driveways. But also, if you have an electrical box on your property, you have to have access for the electric company to come in and service that box if they need to. And finally, you can ask your real estate agent, or they should suggest you based on the requirement of the home, what else you need to know about the property. Getting answers and knowing what to expect can help you make the home buying process move more smoothly. So again, I'm Michelle Flood with eXp Realty. If you have any questions about this or anything else, please hit me up. I'd like to go live later tonight. If anybody has any questions, hit me up if you made it this far, and we can go live and do a question and answer period. Thanks for watching, and go out to my YouTube channel, give this a like and a share, and I appreciate it. Have a great day.